we can work across the aisle in good faith to move forward for the country. Let's begin that work to heal and unite. To heal and unite America as well as the world. I want to thank you all. May God bless you. May God protect our troops. And now I turn this over, this new team, starting with our next Secretary of State, Tony Blinken. Get my mask here, Tony, so I don't get in trouble. And we're going to clean off the podium.
Good afternoon. Mr. President-elect, Vice President-elect Harris, thank you for your trust and your confidence. If confirmed by the United States Senate, I will do everything I can to earn it. Mr. President-elect, working for you, having you as a mentor and friend has been the greatest privilege of my professional life. So many people have brought me to this day, from college classmates to bandmates, my colleagues in the Clinton and Obama administrations, in the Senate, and at the State Department. I thank them all, and I ask forgiveness for my insatiable appetite for bad puns. Mostly, I'd like to thank my family, sisters and sisters-in-law, brothers-in-law, nieces and nephews, my wonderful in-laws, the Ryans, and especially my wife, Evan Ryan, and our children, John and Lila. They are truly my greatest blessings. For my family, as for so many generations of Americans, America has literally been the last best hope on earth. My grandfather, Maurice Blinken, fled pogroms in Russia and made a new life in America. His son, my father, Donald Blinken, served in the United States Air Force during World War II, and then as a United States ambassador. He is my role model and my hero. His wife, Vera Blinken, fled communist Hungary as a young girl and helped future generations of refugees come to America. My mother, Judith Pizarro, builds bridges between America and the world through arts and culture. She is my greatest champion. And my late stepfather, Samuel Pizarro. He was one of 900 children in his school in Białystok, Poland, but the only one to survive the Holocaust after 4 years in concentration camps. At the end of the war, he made a break from a death march into the woods in Bavaria. From his hiding place, he heard a deep rumbling sound. It was a tank, but instead of the Iron Cross, he saw painted on its side a 5-pointed white star. He ran to the tank. The hatch opened. An African-American GI looked down at him. He got down on his knees and said the only 3 words that he knew in English that his mother taught him before the war. God bless America. That's who we are. That's what America represents to the world, however imperfectly. Now, we have to proceed with equal measures of humility and confidence. Humility because, as the President-elect said, we can't solve all of the world's problems alone. We need to be working with other countries. We need their cooperation. We need their partnership. But also confidence, because America at its best still has a greater ability than any other country on earth to bring others together to meet the challenges of our time. And that's where the men and women of the State Department, Foreign Service officers, civil servants, that's where they come in. I've witnessed their passion, their energy, their courage up close. I've seen what they do to keep us safe, to make us more prosperous. I've seen them add luster to a word that deserves our respect, diplomacy. If confirmed, it will be the honor of my life to help guide them. And so thank you all, and may God bless America.
Good afternoon, Mr. President-elect, Madam Vice President-elect. Thank you for placing your trust in me to lead the Department of Homeland Security. Thank you for the privilege of returning with the consent of the Senate to government service as a member of your administration. It is the honor of a lifetime. The Department of Homeland Security has a noble mission to help keep us safe and to advance our proud history as a country of welcome. There are more than 240,000 career employees who selflessly dedicate their talent and energy to this mission. Many risk their lives in doing so. I would be honored to return to the department and support these dedicated public servants in fulfilling their responsibilities and realizing our country's greatest hopes, all in partnership with the communities we serve. For 12 years, I had the privilege to stand in a federal courtroom and announce Alejandro Mayorkas on behalf of the United States of America. The words "on behalf of the United States of America" meant everything to me and to my parents, whom I think of today and every day. My father and mother brought me to this country to escape communism. They cherished our democracy and were intensely proud to become United States citizens, as was I. I have carried that pride throughout my nearly 20 years of government service and throughout my life. My parents are not here to see this day. Mr. President-elect, Madam Vice President-elect, please know that I will work day and night in the service of our nation to ably lead the men and women of the United States Department of Homeland Security and to bring honor to my parents and to the trust you have placed in me to carry your vision for our country forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.
Mr. President-elect, Madam Vice President-elect, I am grateful and even more so humbled by the trust that you placed in me for this role. I'm especially honored to be standing not only by your side, but also alongside some of the most talented and inspiring public servants this country has ever seen. I know, Mr. President-elect and Madam Vice President-elect, that you have selected us not to serve you, but to serve on behalf of the American people, to help advance our security, our prosperity, our values, that the call to service in this role is what makes this nomination such a tremendous honor. If afforded the opportunity to do so, I will never forget that my role on this team is unique. Better than that of a policy advisor, I will represent to you, Congress, and the American public, the patriots who comprise our intelligence community. Mr. President-elect, you know that I have never shied away from speaking truth to power, and that will be my charge as Director of National Intelligence. I've worked for you for a long time, and I accept this nomination knowing that you would never want me to do otherwise, and that you value the perspective of the intelligence community, and that you will do so even when what I have to say may be inconvenient or difficult. And I assure you, there will be those times. And finally, to our intelligence professionals, the work you do, oftentimes under the most austere conditions imaginable, is just indispensable. It will become even more complex because you will be critical to helping this administration position itself, not only against threats such as cyber attacks or terrorism and the proliferation of nuclear, biological, or chemical weapons, but also those challenges that will define the next generation, from climate change to pandemics and corruption. And it would be the honor of a lifetime to be able to work alongside you once again to take these challenges on together. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Mr. President-elect, Madam Vice President-elect. I'm humbled and honored by the trust that you have placed in me to become a member of your cabinet as ambassador to the United Nations. In the years that I've worked in government, I'm always struck by how only in America would we be where we are today, where life can be hard and cruel, but there's hope in the struggle. There's promise in our dreams, where you learn to believe in yourself and that anything is possible. Like both of you, I learned from my family. Mr. President-elect, thank you for those generous words that you said about me. My parents had very little back in Louisiana where I grew up, but they gave me and my siblings everything they had. And I know how proud they would be of this day. On this day, I'm also missing my mentor, Ambassador Ed Perkins, who served as the US Ambassador to the United Nations under President George H.W. Bush and President Clinton, and who was also from Louisiana. He told me constantly, Linda, don't undersell yourself. And he would always do everything possible to lift me up. He passed away last week, but I know he's here with us today. And on this day, I'm thinking about the American people, my fellow career diplomats and public servants around the world. I want to say to you, America is back. Multilateralism is back. Diplomacy is back. Mr. President-elect, I've often heard you say how all politics is personal, and that's how you build relationships of trust and bridge disagreements and find common ground. And in my 35 years in the Foreign Service across 4 continents, I put a Cajun spin on it. I called it gumbo diplomacy. Wherever I was posted around the world, I'd invite people of different backgrounds and beliefs to help me make a roux and chop onions for the Holy Trinity and make homemade gumbo. It was my way of breaking down barriers, connecting with people, and starting to see each other on a human level. A bit of lagniappe is what we say in Louisiana. That's the charge in front of us today. The challenges we face, a global pandemic, a global economy, the global climate change crisis, mass migration and extreme poverty, social justice, are unrelenting and interconnected, but they're not unresolvable if America is leading the way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President-elect, Madam Vice President-elect, thank you. Mr. President-elect, I am honored and humbled by the immense responsibility that you placed in me of being your national security advisor. I pledge to you and to the American people that I will work relentlessly in service of the mission you have given us, to keep our country and our people safe, to advance our national interests, and to defend our values. I pledge to the exceptional national security team you see behind me, and to the brilliant and diverse career professionals across our government, that I will manage a humane and rigorous decision-making process that honors their work. And I pledge to my parents, who taught my brothers, my sister, and me to work hard, tell the truth, and serve others, that I will do my utmost to make you proud. Sir, we will be vigilant in the face of enduring threats, from nuclear weapons to terrorism. But you have also tasked us with reimagining our national security for the unprecedented combination of crises we face at home and abroad: the pandemic, the economic crisis, the climate crisis, technological disruption, threats to democracy, racial injustice, and inequality in all forms. The work of the team behind me today will contribute to progress across all of these fronts. You have also tasked us with putting people at the center of our foreign policy. You've told us that the alliances we rebuild, the institutions we lead, the agreements we sign, all of them should be judged by a basic question. Will this make life better, easier, safer for families across this country? Our foreign policy has to deliver for these families. And perhaps most importantly, you've tasked us with helping unite America, as you said in your remarks, through our work to pull people together to tackle big challenges. My wife, Maggie, the love of my life and my partner in all things, served as a senior advisor to Senator John McCain. She and I shared this commitment to common ground deep in our bones. To the American people, I had the honor of serving as Joe Biden's national security advisor when he was vice president. I learned a lot, about diplomacy, about strategy, about policy, but most importantly, about human nature. I watched him pair strength and resolve with humanity and empathy. That is the person America elected, and that is also America at its best. So, Mr. President-elect, thank you for giving this kid from the heartland an extraordinary opportunity to serve the country I love.
Mr. President-elect, Vice President-elect Harris, thank you, Mr. President-elect, for your generous words. And most of all, thank you for the trust and the responsibility of this appointment. I will do all in my power to live up to your expectations and to this moment for our country and for the world. And I begin by thanking my family for empowering me and encouraging me to take this task on. Secretary-designate Blinken, we've worked together for many years on the Foreign Relations Committee and at Foggy Bottom, and it will be a huge pleasure to partner with you again. You will be a terrific secretary. Mr. President-elect, you've put forward a bold, transformative climate plan. But you've also underscored that no country alone can solve this challenge. Even the United States, for all of our industrial strength, is responsible for only 13% of global emissions. To end this crisis, the whole world must come together. You're right to rejoin Paris on day one, and you're right to recognize that Paris alone is not enough. At the global meeting in Glasgow 1 year from now, all nations must raise ambition together, or we will all fail together. And failure is not an option. Succeeding together means tapping into the best of American ingenuity, creativity, and diplomacy, from brain power to alternative energy power, using every tool we have to get where we have to go. No one should doubt the determination of this president and vice president. They shouldn't doubt the determination of the country that went to the moon, cured supposedly incurable diseases, and beat back global tyranny to win World War II. This kind of crisis demands that kind of leadership again, and President Biden will provide it. The road ahead is exciting, actually. It means creating millions of middle-class jobs. It means less pollution in our air, ocean. It means making life healthier for citizens across the world. And it means we will strengthen the security of every nation in the world. In addressing the climate crisis, President-elect Joe Biden is determined to seize the future now and leave a healing planet to future generations. 57 years ago this week, Joe Biden and I were college kids when we lost the president who inspired both of us to try to make a difference. A president who reminded us that here on earth, God's work must truly be our own. President Joe Biden will trust in God, and he will also trust in science to guide our work on earth to protect God's creation. Mr. President-elect, Vice President-elect Harris, I look forward to getting to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Kerry. And congratulations, Mr. President-elect, on bringing together this extraordinary team. I have always believed in the nobility of public service, and these Americans embody it. Their lives and careers are a testament to the dedication, sacrifice, and commitment to civic responsibility that have strengthened our democracy and kept America's promise alive for more than 200 years. President-elect Biden and I have long known that when we were elected, we would inherit a series of unprecedented challenges upon walking into the White House. Addressing these challenges starts with getting this pandemic under control, opening our economy responsibly, and making sure it works for working people. And we also know that our challenges will require us here at home to overcome those issues that block our ability to proceed. Our challenge here is a necessary foundation for restoring and advancing our leadership around the world. And we are ready for that work. We will need to reassemble and renew America's alliances, rebuild and strengthen the national security and foreign policy institutions that keep us safe and advance our nation's interests, and confront and combat the existential threat of climate change that endangers us all. I take these issues very seriously. My whole career has been about keeping people safe, from serving as district attorney to California's attorney general to the United States Senate, where I have served on the Intelligence and Homeland Security committees. I've come to know firsthand the gravity of the challenges and threats facing the United States. And over the past few months, I've also come to know the sound judgment, expertise, and character of the people on this stage. I can say with confidence that they are, to a person, the right women and men for these critical positions. And I look forward to working alongside them on behalf of the American people and on behalf of a president who will ask tough questions, demand that we be guided by facts, and expect our team to speak the truth, no matter what. A president who will be focused on one thing and one thing only, doing what is best for the people of the United States of America. When Joe asked me to be his running mate, he told me about his commitment to making sure we selected a cabinet that looks like America, that reflects the best of our nation. And that's what we have done. Today's nominees and appointees come from different places. They bring a range of different life and professional experiences and perspectives. And they also share something else in common: an unwavering belief in America's ideals, an unshakable commitment to democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. And they understand the indispensable role of America's leadership in the world. These women and men are patriots and public servants to their core. And they are leaders, the leaders we need to meet the challenges of this moment and those that lie ahead. Thank you.
Thank all of you for accepting. We appreciate it. All right. Thank you, folks.
Welcome to the White House, everybody. As I have already delivered my farewell address, I will try to be relatively brief. But I just want to get some folks together to pay tribute to somebody who's not only been by my side for the duration of this amazing journey, but somebody who has devoted his entire professional life to service to this country. The best vice president America's ever had, Mr. Joe Biden. This also gives the internet one last chance to talk about our bromance. This has been quite a ride. It was 8.5 years ago that I chose Joe to be my vice president. There has not been a single moment since that time that I've doubted the wisdom of that decision. He was the best possible choice, not just for me, but for the American people. This is an extraordinary man with an extraordinary career in public service. This is somebody the people of Delaware sent to the Senate as quickly as they possibly could. Elected at age 29. For more than a dozen years apiece, he served as chair or ranking member of the Judiciary and Foreign Relations Committees. Domestically, he championed landmark legislation to make our communities safer, to protect our women from violence. Internationally, his wisdom and capacity to build relationships has shaped our nation's response to the fall of the Berlin Wall and the Iron Curtain, to counter terrorism, Iraq, Afghanistan. And for the past 8 years, he could not have been a more devoted or effective partner in the progress that we've made. He fought to make college more affordable and revitalize American manufacturing as the head of our middle-class task force. He suited up for our cancer moonshot, giving hope to millions of Americans touched by this disease. He led our efforts to combat gun violence, and he rooted out any possible misappropriations that might have occurred. And as a consequence, the Recovery Act worked as well as just about any large-scale stimulus project has ever worked in this country. He visited college after college and made friends with Lady Gaga for our It's On Us campaign against campus sexual assault. And when the Pope visited, Joe was even kind enough to let me talk to the holiness as well. Behind the scenes, Joe's candid, honest counsel has made me a better president and a better commander-in-chief. From the Situation Room to our weekly lunches to our huddles after everybody else is cleared out of the room, he's been unafraid to give it to me straight, even if we disagree. In fact, especially when we disagree. And all of this makes him, I believe, the finest vice president we have ever seen. And I also think he has been a lion of American history. The best part is he's nowhere close to finish. In the years ahead, as a citizen, he will continue to build on that legacy internationally and domestically. He's got a voice of vision and reason and optimism and love for people. And we're going to need that, that spirit and that vision as we continue to try to make our world safer and to make sure that everybody's got a fair shot in this country. So all told, that's a pretty remarkable legacy, an amazing career in public service. It is, as Joe once said, a big deal. It is. But we all know that on its own, his work, this list of accomplishments, the amazing resume, does not capture the full measure of Joe Biden. I have not mentioned Amtrak yet or aviators, literally. Folks don't just feel like they know Joe, the politician, they feel like they know the person. What makes him laugh, what he believes, what he cares about, where he came from. Pretty much every time he speaks, he treats us to some wisdom from the nuns who taught him in grade school or an old Senate colleague, but of course, most frequently cited, Catherine and Joseph Sr., his mom and dad. No one's better than you, but you're better than nobody. Bravery resides in every heart, and yours is fierce and clear. When you get knocked down, Joey, get up. Get up. Get up. That's where he got those broad shoulders. That's where he got that Biden heart. And through his life, through trial after trial, he has never once forgotten the values and the moral fiber that made him who he is. That's what steels his faith in God and in America and in his friends and in all of us. When Joe talks to auto workers whose livelihoods he helped save, we hear the son of a man who once knew the pain of having to tell his kids that he had lost his job. When Joe talks about hope and opportunity for our children, we hear the father who rode the rails home every night so he could be there to tuck his kids into bed. When Joe sticks up for the little guy, we hear the young boy who used to stand in front of the mirror, reciting Yeats or Emerson, studying the muscles in his face, determined to vanquish a debilitating stutter. When Joe talks to Gold Star families who've lost a hero, we hear a kindred spirit, another father of an American veteran, somebody whose faith has been tested and who has been forced to wander through the darkness himself and who knows who to lean on to find the light. So that's Joe Biden, a resilient and loyal and humble servant and a patriot, but most of all, a family man. Starts with Jill, captain of the Vice Squad. Only the second lady in our history to keep her regular day job. Jill says teaching isn't what she does, it's who she is. A few days after Joe and I were inaugurated in 2009, she was back in the classroom teaching. That's why when our administration worked to strengthen community colleges, we looked to Jill to lead the way. She's also traveled the world to boost education and empowerment for women. And as a Blue Star mom, her work with Michelle to honor our military families will go down in history as one of the most lasting and powerful efforts of this administration. Of course, like Joe, Jill's work is only part of the story. She just seems to walk this earth so lightly, spreads her joy so freely. And she reminds us that although we're in a serious business, we don't have to take ourselves too seriously. She's quick with a laugh or a practical joke, disguising herself as a server at a party she once hosted to liven the mood. Hunter and Ashley, who lived out that family creed of raising good families and looking out for the least of our brothers and sisters. Bo was watching over us with those broad shoulders and mighty heart himself, a man who left a beautiful legacy and inspired an entire nation. Naomi and Finn and Maisie and Natalie and little Hunter, grandchildren who are the light of Joe's eyes and gives him an excuse to bust out the squirt gun around the pool. This is the kind of family that built this country. That's why my family is so proud to call ourselves honorary Bidens. as Yeats put it, because I had to quote an Irish poet, and Seamus Heaney was taken. Think where man's glory most begins and ends, and say my glory was I had such friends. Away from the camera, Jill and Michelle have each other's backs just as much as when they're out championing our troops. Our girls are close, best friends at school, inviting each other for vacations and sleepovers. Even though our terms are nearly over, one of the greatest gifts of these past 8 years is that we're forever bonded as a family. But of course, I know that the Obamas are not the only ones who feel like they're part of the Biden clan, because Joe's heart has radiated around this room. You see it in the enduring friendships he's forged with folks of every stripe and background up on Capitol Hill. You see it in the way that his eyes light up when he finds somebody in a rope line from Scranton or just the tiniest towns in Delaware. You see it in the incredible loyalty of his staff, the team who knows that family always comes before work because Joe tells them so every day, the team that reflects their boss's humble service here in this building where there have been no turf wars between our staffs because everybody here has understood that we were all on the same mission and shared the same values. There's just been cooperation and camaraderie, and that is rare. It's a testament to Joe and the tone that he set. And finally, you see Joe's heart in the way he consoles families dealing with cancer backstage after an event, when he meets kids fighting through a stutter of their own. He gives them his private phone number and keeps in touch with them long after. To know Joe Biden is to know that love without pretense, service without self-regard, and to live life fully. As one of his longtime colleagues in the Senate, who happened to be a Republican, once said, if you can't admire Joe Biden as a person, you've got a problem. He is as good a man as God ever created. So, Joe, for your faith in your fellow Americans, for your love of country, and for your lifetime of service that will endure through the generations, I'd like to ask the military aide to join us on stage. For the final time as president, I am pleased to award our nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And for the first and only time in my presidency, I will bestow this medal with an additional level of veneration, an honor my three most recent successors reserved for only three others: Pope John Paul II, President Ronald Reagan, and General Colin Powell. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to award the Presidential Medal of Freedom with distinction to my brother, Joseph Robinette Biden, Jr. Will the aide please read the citation?
Vice President Joseph R. Biden, Jr. In a career of public service spanning nearly half a century, Vice President Joseph R. Biden, Jr. has left his mark on almost every part of our nation, fighting for a stronger middle class, a fairer judicial system, and a smarter foreign policy, providing unyielding support for our troops, combating crime and violence against women, leading our quest to cure cancer, and safeguarding the landmark American Recovery and Reinvestment Act from corruption. With his charm, candor, unabashed optimism, and deep and abiding patriotism, Joe Biden has garnered the respect and esteem of colleagues of both parties, and the friendship of people across the nation and around the world, while summoning the strength, faith, and grace to overcome great personal tragedy. This son of Scranton, Claymont, and Wilmington has become one of the most consequential vice presidents in American history, an accolade that nonetheless rests firmly behind his legacy as husband, father, and grandfather. A grateful nation thanks Vice President Joseph R. Biden Jr. for his lifetime of service on behalf of the United States of America.
Mr. President. Please, thank you. Thank you. Please. Thank you. Ricchetti, you're fired. For the press, Richetti's my chief of staff. I had no inkling. I thought we were coming over, Michelle, for you, Jill, and Brock and I, a couple of senior staff to toast one another and say what an incredible journey it's been. Mr. President, you got right the part about my leaning on Jill, but I've also leaned on you and a lot of people in this room. I look around the room and I see great friends like Ted Kaufman, who's been so much wisdom. Guys like Mel Monzak. I mean, I look around here and I'm startled. I keep seeing people I don't expect. Madam President, how are you? Mr. President, look at my new boss over there. But you know, I get a lot of credit I don't deserve, to state the obvious. Because I've always had somebody to lean on. From back that time in 1972, when the accident happened, I leaned on, and I mean this in a literal sense, Chris knows this, Dodd knows this, and Mel knows this, and Ted knows this. I leaned on my sons, Bo and Hunter. I continue to lean on Hunter, who continues to, in a bizarre kind of way, raise me. I mean, I've leaned on them. You know, Mr. President, you observed early on that when either one of my boys would walk in the room, they'd walk up and say, "Dad, what can I get you? Dad, what do you need?" And then Jill came along and she saved our life. No man deserves one great love, let alone two. But everybody knows here I am Jill's husband. Everybody knows that I love her more than she loves me, with good reason. and she gave me the most precious gift, the love of my life, the life of my love, my daughter Ashley. And I've continued to lean on the family. President, you kidded me once. You heard that in the preparation for the two debates, vice presidential debates that I had, only had two, that Bo and Hunt would be the last people in the room, and Bo would say, "Look at me, Dad, look at me. Remember home base, remember." So, and the Secret Service can tell you, Mr. President, that Bo and Hunt and Ashley continue to have to corral me. We're at one of the national parks, and I was climbing up on top of a bridge to jump off the bridge with a bunch of young kids, and I hear my sons yelling, "Dad, get down now!" And I just started laughing so hard I couldn't stop. And I said, "I was just going to do a flip off, full gainer off here." I said, "Dad, the Secret Service doesn't want you up there, Dad. Look at me, Dad." You know, so we've never figured out who the father is in this family. And Mr. President, you know that with good reason, there is no power in the vice presidency. Matter of fact, I just did for Nancy Pelosi's daughters, you have readings of the Constitution. You probably did one for her. And they had me read the provisions relating to the vice presidency in the Constitution. And there is no inherent power, nor should there be. But Mr. President, you have more than kept your commitment to me by saying that you wanted me to help govern. President's line often, other people don't hear it that often, but when someone say, "Can you get Joe to do such and such?" he says, "I don't do his schedule, he doesn't do mine." Every single thing you've asked me to do, Mr. President, you have trusted me to do. And that is that's a remarkable thing. I don't think, according to, I see the president of Georgetown here as well, I don't think according to the presidential and vice presidential scholars, that kind of relationship has existed. I mean, for real. It's all you, Mr. President. It's all you. The reason why when you send me around the world, nothing gets, as my mom would say, gets missed between the cup and the lip is because they know when I speak for you. And it's been easy, Mr. President, because we not only have the same political philosophy and ideology, I tell everybody, and I've told them from the beginning, and I'm not saying this to reciprocate, I've never known a president, and few people I've ever met, my whole life, I can count on less than one hand, who've had the integrity and the decency and the sense of other people's needs like you do. I know you're upset when I told the story about when Hunt and I were worried that Bo would have to, that he would, as a matter of honor, decide he had to step down as Attorney General while he was fighting his battle because he had aphasia. He was losing his ability to speak. And he didn't want to ever be in a position where, to him, everything was about duty and honor. And I said, and he may resign. I don't know. I just have a feeling he may. And Hunt and I had talked about this. And I said, he doesn't have any other income, but we're all right because Hunt's there and I can sell the house. We're having a private lunch like we do once a week. And this man got up, came over, grabbed me by the shoulders, looked me in the eye and said, "Don't you sell that house. You love that house." I said, "It's no big deal, Mr. President." He said, "I'll give you the money. We'll give you the money. Promise me. Promise me. You won't sell that house." I remember when Ashley, Mr. President, we were in the Oval, and Ashley was in an elevator. And the elevator plummeted to she was with a group of people, I forget which building in Philadelphia, and it plummeted to the ground. And immediately the service was worried that, she may have been badly hurt. And I got up to take the call, and you didn't let up until you made sure your service followed through and made sure everything was all right. But Mr. President, we kid about both about marrying up. We both did that kind of thing. But the truth of the matter is, I said this to Michelle last night. Michelle is the finest first lady, in my view, that has ever served in the office. There's been other great first ladies, but I really genuinely mean it. As kids, when I got to meet Michelle's brother, and he told me about how you guys were raised, and I got to know and love your mom. If your mom 15 years older, she could have been my mom. I mean, literally, the way you were raised, the way we were raised, there wasn't any difference. And I knew that this decision to join you, which was the greatest honor of my life, was the right decision on the night we had to go and accept the nomination, the formal, we'd be nominated at the convention. And Finnegan, who's now 18 years old, was then 10 years old. And she came to me and she said, "Pop, is it okay if the room that we're in, Finnegan, Maisie, and Naomi, that we have the beds taken out?" And I said, "Why?" He said, "Maybe the Obama girls and your brother's children, maybe they would come down and all sleep together in sleeping bags." And I give you my word as a Biden, I knew when I left to go over to the convention, opened that door and saw them cuddle together, I knew this was the right decision. I knew it was the right decision. I really did. Because, Mr. President, the same value set. The same value set. Folks, I joke with my staff that I don't know why they pay them anything, because they get to advise me. Let me explain what I mean by that. As the president of the University of Delaware, where my heart resides, in my home campus of Delaware, as he can tell you, I get to give you advice. I get to be the last guy in the room and give you advice on the most difficult decisions anyone has to make in the whole world. But I get to walk out, and you make it all by yourself. All by yourself. Harry Truman was right about the buck stopping at the desk. And I've never once doubted on these life and death decisions. I never once doubted that your judgment was flawed. Not once. Not once. We've disagreed and we've argued and we've raised our voices with one another, which we made a deal we'd be completely open like brothers with one another. But Mr. President, I watched you under intense fire. I will venture to say that no president in history has had as many novel crises land on his desk in all of history. The Civil War was worse, the World War II was worse, World War I. But, Mr. President, almost every one of the crises you faced was a case of first instance. Case of first instance. And I watched that prodigious mind and that heart as big as your head. I've watched you. I've watched how you've acted. When you see a woman or man under intense pressure, you get a measure, and you know that, Michelle, and your daughters know it as well. This is a remarkable man. And I just hope that the asterisk in history that is attached to my name when they talk about this presidency is that I can say I was part of the journey of a remarkable man who did remarkable things for this country. You know, I can't let a comment go by without quoting an Irish poet. Jill and I talk about why you were able to develop the way you developed and with the heart you have. Michelle and I have talked about it. I've confided in Michelle. I've gone to her for advice. We've talked about this man. You give me insight. And I think it's because, Mr. President, you gave me credit for understanding other people's misery and suffering. Mr. President, there's not one single solitary ounce of entitlement in you, or Michelle, or your beautiful daughters. And you girls are incredible. You really are. That's not hyperbole. You really are. Not 1 ounce of entitlement. And Seamus Heaney, in one of his poems, said, when you can find someone who says it better, use it. He said, you carried your own burden, and very soon your symptoms of creeping privilege disappeared. You carried your own burdens, and very soon the creeping symptoms of privilege disappeared. Mr. President, you have sometimes been like a lone wolf, but you carried yourself in a way that's pretty remarkable. The history of the journey, your journey, is something people are going to write about in a long time. And I'm not being solicitous when I say this. And you're so fortunate, both of you, to have found each other. Because all that grounding, all that you had, made this guy totally whole. And it's pretty amazing. Mr. President, this honor is not only well beyond what I deserve, but it's a reflection of the extent and generosity of your spirit. I don't deserve this, but I know it came from the president's heart. There's a Talmudic saying that says, what comes from the heart enters the heart. Mr. President, you have creeped into our heart, you and your whole family, including Mom, and you occupy it. It's an amazing thing that happened. I knew how smart you were. I knew how honorable you were. I knew how decent you were from the couple years we worked in the Senate. And I knew what you were capable of. But I never fully expected that you'd occupy the Biden's heart, from Hunter, Ashley, my sister, all of us. All of us. And Mr. President, I'm indebted to you. I'm indebted to your friendship. I'm indebted to your family. And I'll tell you, I'll end on a humorous note. We're having lunch, and our lunches, and mostly, and it's whatever in either one of our minds. We talk about family an awful lot. And about 6 months in, the president looked at me and said, you know, Joe, you know what surprised me? How we've become such good friends. And I said, surprised you? But that is candid Obama. And it's real. And Mr. President, you know, as long as there's a breath in me, I'll be there for you. My whole family will be, and I know it is reciprocal. And I want to thank you all so very, very, very much. All of you for being here. Where are my grandkids? Come on.
Barack, welcome to Canada. Mesdames et messieurs,
Ladies
le
and
président
gentlemen,
des
the
États-Unis
President of
d'Amérique,
the United
Barack
States of
Obama.
America, Barack Obama.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Please everyone have a seat. Thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening. Bonjour. Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, members of the House, members of the Senate, distinguished guests, people of Canada. Thank you for this extraordinary welcome, which tempts me to just shut up and leave. Because it can't get any better than this. Obviously, I'm grateful for the warm welcome. I'm extraordinarily grateful for the close working relationship and friendship with your outstanding Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and his extraordinary wife, Sophie. But I think it's fair to say that much of this greeting is simply a reflection of the extraordinary alliance and deep friendship between Canadians and Americans. Justin, thank you for your very kind words and for the new energy and hope that your leadership has brought to your nation as well as to the alliance. My time in office may be nearing an end, but I know that Canada and the world will benefit from your leadership for years to come. So Canada was the very first country that I visited as president. It was in February. It was colder. I was younger. Michelle now refers to my hair as the Great White North. And on that visit, I strolled around the Byward Market, tried a beaver tail, which is better than it sounds. And I was struck then, as I am again today, by the warmth of Canadians. I could not be more honored to be joining you in this historic hall, this Cathedral of Freedom. And we Americans can never say it enough. We could not ask for a better friend or ally than Canada. We could not. That's true. And we do not take it for granted. That does not mean we don't have our differences. As I understand it, one of the reasons the Queen chose this site for Parliament was that it was a safe distance from America's border. And I admit, in the War of 1812, American troops did some damage to Toronto. I suspect that there were some people up here who didn't mind when the British returned the favor and burned down the White House. In more recent times, however, the only forces crossing our borders are the armies of tourists and business people and families who are shopping and doing business and visiting loved ones. Our only battles take place inside the hockey rink. Even there's an uneasy peace that is maintained. As Americans, we too celebrate the life of Mr. Hockey himself, the late, great Gordie Howe. Just as Canadians can salute American teams for winning more Stanley Cups in the NHL. I told you I should have stopped after the applause. But in a world where too many borders are a source of conflict, our two countries are joined by the longest border of peace on earth. And what makes our relationships so unique is not just proximity. It's our enduring commitment to a set of values. The spirit alluded to by Justin that says no matter who we are, where we come from, what our last names are, what faith we practice, here we can make of our lives what we will. It was the grit of pioneers and prospectors who pushed west across a forbidding frontier. The dreams of generations, immigrants, refugees that were welcomed to these shores. The hope of runaway slaves who went north on an underground railroad. Deep in our history of struggle, said Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Canada was the North Star. The Freedom Road links us together. We're bound as well by the service of those who've defended us. At Flanders Field, the beaches of Normandy, the skies of the Balkans, and more recently in the mountains of Afghanistan and training bases in Iraq. And their sacrifice is reflected in the silent rows of Arlington and in the Peace Tower above us. And today we honor those who gave their lives for all of us. We're linked together as well by the institutions that we've built to keep the peace. The United Nations to advance our collective aspirations. A NATO alliance to ensure our security. NORAD where Americans and Canadians stand watch side by side and track Santa on Christmas Eve. We're linked by a vast web of commerce that carries goods from one end of this continent to another. And we're linked by the ties of friendship and family. In my case, an outstanding brother-in-law from Burlington. Had to give Burlington a shout out. Our relationship is so remarkable precisely because it seems so unremarkable, which is why Americans often are surprised when our favorite American actor or singer turns out to be Canadian. The point is, we see ourselves in each other, and our lives are richer for it. As president, I've deepened the ties between our countries. And because of the progress we've made in recent years, I can stand before you and say that the enduring partnership between Canada and the United States is as strong as it has ever been, and we are more closely aligned than ever before. And yet we meet at a pivotal moment for our nations and for the globe. From this vibrant capital, we can look upon a world that has benefited enormously from the international order that we helped build together. But we can see that same order increasingly strained by the accelerating forces of change. The world is, by almost every measure, less violent than ever before. But it remains riven by old divisions and fresh hatreds. The world's more connected than ever before, but even as it spreads knowledge and the possibility of greater understanding between peoples, it also empowers terrorists who spread hatred and death, most recently in Orlando and Istanbul. The world is more prosperous than ever before. But alongside globalization and technological wonders, we also see a rise in inequality and wage stagnation across the advanced economies, leaving too many workers and communities fearful of diminishing prospects, not just for themselves, but more importantly for their children. And in the face of such rising uncertainty, it is not enough to look at aggregate growth rates or stock prices or the pace of digital innovation. If the benefits of globalization accrue only to those at the very top, if our democracies seem incapable of assuring broad-based growth and opportunity for everyone, then people will push back out of anger or out of fear. And politicians, some sincere and some entirely cynical, will tap that anger and fear, hearkening back to bygone days of order and predictability and national glory, arguing that we must rebuild walls and disengage from a chaotic world, or rid ourselves of the supposed ills brought on by immigrants, all in order to regain control of our lives. We saw some of these currents at work this past week in the United Kingdom's referendum to leave the European Union. Despite some of the initial reactions, I am confident that the process can be managed in a prudent, orderly way. I expect that our friends on both sides of the channel will develop a workable plan for how to move forward. And I'm equally confident that the transatlantic values that we all share as liberal, market-based democracies are deeper and stronger than any single event. But while the circumstances of Brexit may be unique to the United Kingdom, the frustrations people felt are not. The short-term fallout of Brexit can be sensibly managed, but the long-term trends of inequality and dislocation and the resulting social division, those can't be ignored. How we respond to the forces of globalization and technological change will determine the durability of an international order that ensures security and prosperity for future generations. And fortunately, the partnership between the United States and Canada shows the path we need to travel. For our history and our work together speak to a common set of values to build on. Proven values, values that your Prime Minister spoke of in his introduction, values of pluralism and tolerance, rule of law, openness, global engagement and commerce and cooperation, coupled with equal opportunity and an investment in our people at home. As Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau once said, a country, after all, is not something you build as the pharaohs build the pyramids and then leave standing there to defy eternity. A country is something that is built every day out of certain basic shared values. What is true of countries is true of the world. And that's what I want to talk about today, how to strengthen our institutions to advance these commitments in a rapidly changing world. Now, let me start with our shared economic vision. In all we do, our commitment to opportunity for all of our people has to be at the centerpiece of our work. We are so fortunate because both of our countries are so well positioned to succeed in the 21st century. Our two nations know firsthand the awesome power of free markets and innovation. Canadians help run some of Silicon Valley's most innovative companies. Our students study at each other's world-class universities. We invest in research and development and make decisions based on science and evidence. And it works. It's what's created these extraordinary economies of ours. But if the financial crisis and recent recession taught us anything, it's that economies do better when everyone has a chance to succeed. For a long time, it was thought that countries had to choose between economic growth or economic inclusion, but it turns out that's a false choice. If a CEO makes more in a day than a typical employee makes in a year, that kind of inequality is not just bad for morale in the company. Turns out it's bad for the economy. That worker is not a very good customer for business. If a young man in Ohio can't pay his student loans, or a young woman in Ontario can't pay her bills, that has ramifications for our economy. It tamps down the possibilities of growth. So we need growth that is broad and that lifts everybody up, including tax policies that do right by working families and robust safety nets for those who fall on hard times. As John Kenneth Galbraith once said, the common denominator of progress is our people. It's not numbers, it's not abstractions. It's how are people doing? Now, of course, many who share this progressive, inclusive vision can be heard now arguing that investments in our people, protections for our workers, fair tax policies, these things are not enough. For them, globalization is inherently rigged towards the top 1%. And therefore, what's needed is an end to trade agreements and various international institutions and arrangements that integrate national economies. And I understand that vision. I know why it's tempting. It seems as if we draw a line around our borders that it'll give us more control, particularly when the benefits of trade and economic integration are sometimes hard to see or easy to take for granted. And the very specific dislocations are obvious and real. There's just one problem. Restricting trade or giving in to protectionism in this 21st century economy will not work. It will not work. Even if we wanted to, we can't seal ourselves off from the rest of the world. The day after Brexit, people looked around and said, oh, how's this going to work? The drag that economic weakness in Europe and China and other countries is having on our own economies right now speaks to the degree to which we depend, our economies depend, our jobs, our businesses depend on selling goods and services around the world. Very few of our domestic industries can sever what is now truly a global supply chain. And so for those of us who truly believe that our economies have to work for everybody, the answer is not to try and pull back from our interconnected world. It is rather to engage with the rest of the world, to shape the rules so they're good for our workers and good for our businesses. And the experience between our two nations points the way. The United States and Canada have the largest bilateral trade and investment relationship in the world, and we are stronger for it. It means a company in Quebec